Hello, and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use live at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. Today is November the 5th, 2025, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. And I apologize, we're running a bit late with technical difficulties, and I am on my old headphones, so if uh, the sound isn't that great, it's because my newer headphones broke today, and so now I have some headphones on order, so it should be here on Friday. So hopefully we'll have the new headphones ready for you next week. But let's go ahead and jump in and get started with our affirmation for today. Most answers reveal themselves through doing, not thinking. I want to say that again. Most answers reveal themselves through doing, not thinking. This is from the Jen Sincero You Are a Badass calendar for 2025. Let's go ahead and get into the news, as we do have a lot to cover today. All right, so here's our first news story, which is kind of a bit of a sadder news story, and I hate to see this, but those of you who know about this story, you may remember this documentary that was Take Care of Maya that was on one of the major streaming platforms. I won't say, but if you want to know where it is, I can certainly tell you and put it in the comments. But anyway, so this is based off of this story, and it's, of course, have gone to court again. So this is from nurse.org. And I wanted to share with you now. I will put a trigger warning out here. There are some sensitive topics in here. So I am going to try to be as respectful as I can because of social media and things like that. But I just wanted to let you know I'm going to issue a trigger warning here. So the Take Care of Maya Hospital wins their appeal. The $208 million verdict reversed after nurse mom's unaliving of herself. Okay, so let's get into the story. Nearly 2 years after a Florida jury awarded more than $200 million to the Kowalski family, a state appeals court has overturned the verdict against Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. The case gained national attention through the Netflix documentary Take Care of Maya, which told the story of Maya Kowalski, who was just 10 years old when she was treated at the hospital in 2016. Maya suffered from complex regional pain syndrome. CRPS, a rare and painful condition. Her mother, Beta Kowalski, a registered nurse, pushed for ketamine treatments to relieve her daughter's severe pain. Hospital staff grew concerned about the treatment plan and questioned the diagnosis. Believing Maya might be a victim of medical abuse, they reported the situation to the Florida Department of Children and Families. That report led to a court order placing Maya in the hospital's custody for more than 3 months, separating her from her parents. And during that period, Beta unfortunately unalived herself. In 2023, a Sarasota County jury found that the hospital liable for false imprisonment, medical negligence, battery, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The jury initially awarded $261 million, though the judge later reduced that amount to $213 million. Now, the Second District Court of Appeal has ruled that the trial court made major legal errors, particularly in applying Florida's good faith immunity law, which protects healthcare workers who report suspected child abuse. The appellate judges said the hospital acted appropriately in making the report and that the lower court should have dismissed several claims or ordered a new trial. Some parts of the case aren't over yet. Claims included intentional infliction of emotional distress, false imprisonment, battery, and medical negligence may still be retried. Ethan Shapiro, an attorney for Johns Hopkins All Children, called the ruling resounding and said it reaffirms the legal protections for providers who report suspected abuse in good faith. He also criticized the Take Care of Maya for what he described as a one-sided narrative. So I have actually not seen the show. So if any of you have seen the show, I've read the story. When the story initially broke, we covered it on the show with the Netflix series coming out and the stuff about the nurse and her death. So we did cover those things. But if you watched it, let me know what you think about it and share. This is a case continues to raise difficult questions about how far hospitals should go when they suspect child abuse, the legal protections healthcare workers have, and how families are affected when those suspicions prove wrong. And unfortunately, there are some cases where, um, as a healthcare professional, we have to, or mandated reporters. If we don't report and something happens, it can come after our license. I mean, it's a sticky situation. Don't get me wrong. And unfortunately, there's more to this case than what's in this article. So when I originally read the case, and from what I understand, is that they had another doctor that treated their daughter, knew the treatment plan. They wouldn't take the information from that doctor. They seemed to decide that no, this was sort of Munchausen issue or some sort of neglect or abuse. And they didn't allow the care. And then, and unfortunately, because of that allegation, you have to understand this mother was also a nurse, and so that means that triggers investigations on her nursing license and possibly something to put on her permanent file by the nursing board. So it would have cascaded to a lot of different things. And it sounds like the mom had already had pre-existing mental health issues, dealing with a very sick child that can, predispose you to depression, anxiety, excessive worry. And then you're taking away her child. She doesn't know where her child is, who's taking care of her. So there's a lot of different things. So when I read the initial complaints, there's a lot more to it than what they've kind of reported here. So I wanted to share that. So I'm interested in see what happens going forward with this case. But if you have any insight or you've actually watched the documentary, let me know, because I didn't want to watch the documentary. It just seemed too much for me. But all right, let me get to our next story. So this next story is coming from excuse me, finance executive, finance, and it says ethical safeguards must evolve as AI becomes more prevalent. AI regulation efforts are still coming into focus as current federal and state efforts are a patchwork of what's needed, according to Dr. Joy. I hope I say her name, Bohsai, founder and CEO of Pluto Health. Regulations are nebulous. International efforts include a recent open letter on AI from celebrities and notables in the field. And in September, the United Nations launched 2 government bodies for AI. As AI becomes more prevalent, ethical safeguards must evolve for hospitals and other healthcare organizations. This includes securing voluntary cooperation from big tech companies to agree on how to use and leverage the data, closing policy loopholes, especially for gray areas, and increasing transparency with users. Bosai founded Pluto Health in 2020 as a tech-enabled company that uses AI to close gaps in care and connect patients to services in clinical trials. Pluto analyzes the medical data, identifies missed appointments or unfulfilled prescriptions. It can send a phlebotomist to the house or schedule a telehealth appointment. Pluto uses hospital data to develop its models. Pluto looked at the source of inputs and determined it couldn't be secondhand. To mitigate the risk of getting inaccurate data, Pluto decided to go directly to the source. The company reviews information on 5,000 to 10,000 patients a month. We need to acknowledge that the data can be inaccurate. AI models can't be run on incomplete information. And I will have to say that could very well be true, because how many of us know that there may be something that got into your medical record? Maybe they at one time they thought you were allergic to a medication, but it's not really an allergy. It's more of an intolerance. And you could take the medication if they were to give you something for the nausea or something like that. So it's not a true medication allergy, but yet it persists in your chart. And what if that is the one life-saving medication that you need? So, just being cognizant of some of those things. And then, there could be a misdiagnosis that gets labeled in there, or someone puts a code in wrong, and it perpetuates in your medical record. So then that information then goes to AI, and then AI can make improper decisions. So it says in December, the Duke University spinoff announced it was expanding its payer relationships to extend its care model to patients with a wide range of insurance coverage. This includes Medicare, Medicaid, and major commercial plans such as United Healthcare, Aetna, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Ambetter, and Cigna in select states. In an October open letter, AI scientists, celebrities, and others called for a ban on the development of superintelligence, a hypothetical AI technology that could exceed the intelligence of all humanity until the technology is reliably safe and controllable, according to Forbes. The open letter urged policymakers to define what AI should never be allowed to do and enact laws by the end of 2026, given the rapid expansion of the technology. One of the things that concerns me is that now we have a lot of fake videos that are popping up on social media, and some people aren't as savvy as being able to detect that some of these videos were produced by AI. But then my other fear is that one day they'll get so sophisticated that you won't be able to detect that these videos were created with AI. And what those scenes that it predict may not be true. So that really concerns me as we're looking and introducing this into the healthcare field. But let's go on. At an AI governance meeting at the United Nations in September, discussions centered on creating a scientific panel to inform models. Two AI governance bodies were launched: the Global Dialogue on AI Governance and the Independent International Scientific Panel on AI. The new architecture is intended to usher in a more inclusive format of international governance for AI, according to the World Economic Forum. And so when you think about what's happening with your healthcare data, we have to be very careful in how we deploy and use AI. I think it's a very useful tool. Don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-AI, not at all. But I think we should use it wisely. Okay, here's our next story from Ignite's long-term care news. Federal freeze reorganization leaves skilled nursing providers reliant on outdated guidance. Amid an ongoing federal communications freeze and the government shutdown, skilled nursing providers are awaiting at least four important policy updates that have them essentially operating in the dark in key areas. Jody Iger, Senior Director of Nursing Home Quality and Health Regulation for Leading Edge, outlined COVID related and quality reporting concerns tied to outdated guidance as part of a larger presentation on evolving federal policy. The session was held on the third day of the organization's annual meeting. Dramatic Centers for Disease Control and Prevention changes under the second Trump administration have left providers reliant on government guidance that in some cases are nearly 2 years old. That is especially problematic for older COVID response standards that are not necessarily aging well in what remains an evolving disease landscape. For example, providers still are officially required to follow respiratory illness isolation guidance. That keeps residents who have tested positive for COVID or respiratory illness in isolation for 10 to 20 days, even if they no longer have symptoms and are fever free. The Healthcare Infection Control Practices Advisory Committee, or HICPAC, was tasked with creating national standards for providers, but was disbanded in March by the new administration. Its work that was pending at the time, including updating isolation standards, has yet to be acted on, Iger said. There's no update for nursing homes. However, because HIPAC's last set of recommendations were not approved by the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention or published in the Federal Register. It was moving along in that direction, and then the new administration came in. They put the comms freeze on the CDC, and so those guidelines are just sitting there. All of these things that we desperately need have been done by the CDC, and yet they can't be released, and nothing can be done about it. Some other outstanding needs include the updated infection control guidance, which was also being reviewed by HICPAC, and update return to work guidance for healthcare staff who tested positive for COVID. Currently, they must stay off work for 7 to 10 days. Okay. A modernized definition of up to date for COVID vaccine reporting, requiring patients in the CMS quality reporting program and healthcare staff in weekly NHSN reporting. The last standard referenced the 2023-2024 COVID shots and expired in September. This fall, the CDC made no recommendations for healthcare worker vaccinations and also made it harder for people under 65 to access COVID shots. All of those factors have left providers guessing as to whether they can consider people in their organization up to date. Everybody's reporting on up to date status, but who knows how you're reporting? There's no guaranteed consistency in that. That is something that we certainly will be bringing up with CMS. Leading Edge has asked CMS to throw out the QRP data for this period because of provider uncertainty. One good thing related to many of these issues, Iger said, is that the CDC has released some evidence and background documentation behind would-be updates that could help other organizations step into the void and provide their own national standards. The question is whether CMS would accept those when used by providers to justify COVID, respiratory illness, or other decisions on reporting. We still have CDC's old guidance, so we don't know what the CMS expectation for enforcement is, and we can't get an answer from them because they are on a communication freeze. This puts all of us in a very difficult position. Some providers are choosing to use alternative standards to underpin their workflows and reporting choices. Those might include state or local public health guidance or guidance from national healthcare organizations or other reputable sources. If you can show what you're doing and it's based on best practices, you're usually okay. So we're hoping that that's going to be the case, she said, adding that providers who do should be sure to have documentation supporting the decision-making process and be able to show the standard to surveyors later. So that, again, puts a barrier in place for providers who really want to do their due diligence and do what they're supposed to do. And now we possibly will have repercussions if we don't do it exactly how they want it because there's no guidance. And that's a problem. Let's take this next story and then we'll take a brief break. And our thoughts go out to those in Jamaica that were affected with the hurricane. And this is from nurse.org. And it says Jamaica issues emergency call for healthcare volunteers at Black River Hospital. Jamaica is calling on doctors and healthcare volunteers to help support critical services at Black River Hospital. And it's not just doctors who are needed. Recently, the Jamaica Information Service reported a joint appeal from the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association and the Ministry of Health, urging qualified healthcare workers to volunteer at Black River Hospital. The call highlights a shortage of medical staff, including physicians and nurses, who can provide essential care during this period of increased demand. According to the announcement, interested volunteers must apply through the Jamaican Red Cross, the official body coordinating these efforts. This ensures that all volunteers meet the necessary accreditation and licensing requirements before deployment, helping maintain high standards of care. While doctors naturally play a critical role, nurses and other healthcare professionals have an important place on Jamaica's volunteer teams. Whether it's assisting with patient care, health education, or supporting medical procedures, nurses will find meaningful ways to impact communities in need. The Ministry of Health also stresses the importance of involving local health authorities in planning volunteer activities. Participants are expected to submit detailed information about the services they will provide and collaborate with parish and regional officials to align with community needs. While the recent official appeal from the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association and the Medical Association of Jamaica focuses mainly on volunteer doctors, multiple sources confirmed a national call for nurse volunteers as well. The Jamaican Nursing Council has received inquiries from U.S. nurse volunteers wanting to assist. Additionally, posts from the Jamaica Ministry of Health and major news report highlight urgent needs for nurses and other healthcare workers to provide patient care following the recent hurricane impacts. Volunteers may be placed at Black River Hospital or other facilities, depending on availability and community needs. Shifts range from 8 to 48 hours, and coordination occurs through the official channels such as Jamaican Red Cross and Ministry of Health. For more details and to express interest, nurses can contact local volunteer hotlines or the Jamaican Nursing Council. This broad call invites nurses and healthcare staff to contribute to Jamaica's recovery. So if you are available to go and volunteer, consider calling them up and going to volunteer in Jamaica and helping in this crisis. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break and then we'll get right back at it. Ready to turn your nursing skills into a thriving business? At the Nurse Shark Academy, we give you expert strategies, real startup guidance, and the support to go from employee to empowered entrepreneur. Join us and build the nurse-owned business of your dreams. Start today and join us at the NurseSharkAcademy.biz. All right, let's get to the next story here. This is another difficult story to report on. This is coming out of Germany, actually. So I just wanted to, again, because it involves the intentional act of taking someone's life and unaliving them. I want to make sure that I issue a trigger warning. So here we go. Nurse gets life sentence for unaliving of 10 patients and attempted unaliving of 27 others in Germany. A German court on Wednesday ordered a life jail sentence to a palliative care nurse for the unaliving of 10 patients and attempted unaliving of 27 others with lethal injections. The court in the western city of, I'm hoping to say this right, Aachen, found the 44-year-old man guilty of the offenses committed between December 2023 and May of 2024 in a hospital in Würselen near Aachen. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. The court also determined that the offense carried a, quote, particular severity of guilt, which should bar him from early release after 15 years, normally an option in such cases. The man, who has not been publicly named. Can I just stop here for a minute? Can I just stop here for a second? So, he's been convicted, had a crime. Germany is not naming his name. I think I just had, because here in the U.S., we're so quick to blast people, put them out there even before they've been convicted, right? Even before they've been convicted, we put people on blast. But even after his conviction, they didn't release his name. I want us to think about that because of the damage that we do in the reputation of people. Because in our country, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Supposed to be. So that just gives me pause. So anyway, I just, when I first saw this case, I thought, wow, they didn't release his name. Usually they do that for the victim. But this man was convicted. And I just find that interesting. So if you're in Germany and there's something different with your laws, let me know. Because I just find that fascinating. Because in the U.S., even just a whisper or something, they'll just automatically just put you on blast. So anyway, back to the story. It says, the man, who has not been publicly named, was accused by prosecutors of playing master of life and death over those in his care. His defense had demanded an acquittal at the trial, which began in March. Prosecutors said he injected the mostly elderly patients with large doses of sedatives or painkillers with the simple aim of reducing his workload during night shifts. They told the court the man suffered from a personality disorder, had never shown any compassion for the patients, and had voiced no remorse during the trial. The court was told that the nurse used morphine and midazolam, a muscle relaxant sometimes used for unaliving people legally in the U.S. by the court system. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Prosecutors had accused him of working, quote, without enthusiasm and with no motivation. He completed his training as a nursing professional in 2007 and then worked for various employers, including in Cologne. In 2020, or since 2020, he had been employed at the hospital in Würselen. He was arrested in the summer of 2024. Prosecutors told AFP that exhumations have taken place to identify further victims and that the man may be put on trial again. It says this case echoes that of nurse Heinz Hogel, so they did mention his name, who was handed a life sentence in 2019 for unaliving 85 patients and who is believed to be modern Germany's most prolific unaliver in several order, right? So Hogel killed patients with lethal injections between 2000 and 2005 before it was caught. Psychiatrists said he suffered from a severe narcissistic disorder. More recently, in July, a 40-year-old palliative care specialist named by media as Johann M went on trial in Berlin accused of unaliving 15 patients with lethal injections between 2021 and 2024. In at least 5 of those cases, he's suspected of setting fire to his victims' homes in an attempt to cover up his crimes. Prosecutors and police say he had no motive beyond unaliving and that the suspect's acts meets the legal definition of lust for unaliving. In England, of course, we're talking about, who you know, neonatal nurse Lucy Letby is serving a life sentence for unaliving 7 babies and attempting to unalive 6 others. On July 1st, 3 former senior leaders at the hospital where Letby worked were arrested on suspicion of gross negligence, manslaughter. So, yeah, that was a lot. And I wanted to share that because it's interesting. So from CBS News, um, but I found that this interesting where we're seeing more scrutiny on some of these cases now and finding some of that. So if you're in Germany and you got some insight, let me know. Okay. And okay, so this is an opinion piece, and this is from nurse.org. So some of you let me know. I didn't know about the story, but I'm just curious as to what's happening here. But again, this was an opinion piece. So I'm going to go ahead and share it. It says nurse breaks silence after being fired for reporting hospital's baby mix up. Okay. So this is taken from, they did a Nurse Converse podcast. And so they interviewed Joyce Fisher for this. Okay. So it says it's a scenario where every nurse dreads a mistake so serious that it shakes the foundation of trust between caregivers and families. But what happens when the nurse who catches the mistake, not the one who made it, is the one who loses her job? Which is, okay, let's go on and read it. That's exactly what allegedly happened to Joyce Fisher, a seasoned mother-baby nurse at Virtua Health in New Jersey. Fisher's story isn't just about wrongful termination. It's about a growing crisis in healthcare accountability, one that sometimes punishes those who speak up rather than those who stay silent. And that is my issue, because a lot of times the organizations want to sweep things under the rug and act like it didn't happen until, of course, somebody gets wind of it, and then they want to throw you under the bus. So that gives me pause. But anyway, so let's see what happened. So it says Fisher began her day like any other, clocking in at 7 a.m., taking a report, and preparing to care for 3 mother-baby couplets. Within an hour, she noticed something that would upend her career. A new mother, ready for discharge, looked at the infant in her arms and said the words no nurse expects to hear: "This is not my baby." The patient's identification bracelets didn't match the mother's. The baby in her arms belonged to another family down the hall, and that baby, too, had already been breastfed by the wrong mother. I remember when this came out. I remember this story when it came out about this incident. Fisher immediately escalated the issue. She notified her supervisor, the pediatrician, and coordinator, and immediately implemented the hospital's breast milk mismanagement protocol, which she was supposed to do, I guess, a policy she had never heard of before that morning. Blood work was ordered for both mothers and infants to rule out communicable diseases. Thankfully, all results came back clear, but the emotional trauma for the families and the professional fallout for Fisher were only beginning. Fisher's quick action prevented further harm, but within days she was called into a meeting with hospital leadership. What began as an internal investigation into how babies were switched soon turned into a review of her conduct. And this is what upsets me. It probably was a systems error, but it started out, okay, we're going to do an internal review, which is code for we're covering our behind, and we're going to, do everything we can to come out of this looking good, and we got to point the fingers at somebody. I'm sorry, but I just find this highly unethical. So anyway, let's go on. Despite providing a detailed written and verbal account, and despite not being on duty when the error occurred, Fisher was accused of gross negligence and summarily terminated. The hospital also reported her to the State Board of Nursing. Ding, 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 ding. See, and that's the issue, because now she's reporting she found this. She didn't do it. She found it. And now they're reporting her to the State Board of Nursing. And of course, the State Board of Nursing is not your friend. So I'm just going to say this to nurses: you get those, lawyer up quickly. Lawyer up quickly. Her offense: not checking infant identification bracelets at the start of her shift, a practice she says she was never trained or instructed to perform. I've onboarded new nurses for years, Fisher said. We never check bracelets at the beginning of a shift. That's not a real policy anyone was following. And I would like to see when it was put into place. When did they enact said policy? See, they had a few days to kind of cover stuff up. Mm-hmm. And who knows if they retroactively created this policy and put a date on it. But we can find out. I mean, I can't, but attorney can. What happened to Fisher is not an isolated case. Across the U.S., nurses who report safety lapses or medical errors often face retaliation, suspensions, terminations, and even loss of licensure. Instead of promoting a culture of transparency and accountability, some institutions cultivate fear, and that fear costs lives. Nurses are the last line of defense between hospital systems and patient harm. When a nurse is fired for catching an error, what message does that send to every other nurse on the floor? Speak up, and you could be next. Mistakes in medicine are inevitable, but accountability must be systemic. Policies must be clear, training consistent, and blame proportionate. Joyce Fisher didn't make the error. She prevented any further harm. She did everything we tell nurses to do: follow protocol, document carefully, and escalate concerns. For that, she lost her livelihood. This case has the potential to set a dangerous precedent for nurses everywhere. If whistleblowing or error reporting leads to termination, patient safety will erode. The healthcare system cannot survive if those who uphold its standards are punished for doing so. Hospitals love to advertise the just culture, an approach meant to balance accountability with understanding, encouraging staff to report errors and system failures so everyone can learn and improve. In theory, it's designed to create safety through transparency, not punishment. But as Fisher's story shows, that ideal too often collapses when liability and public image are on the line. Joyce Fisher's story is more than one nurse's tragedy. It's a warning to an entire profession. As nurses, we must demand transparency in investigations, union support during disciplinary actions, and true protection from those who report safety issues. Hospital leadership must be held accountable to the same standards they impose on staff. Firing a nurse for exposing a system failure doesn't protect patients, it protects the system. And until that changes, we all remain at risk. So that story is headed over at nurse.org. If you want to read more and listen to the podcast, please head on over there as well. All right, we have time for one last story, and this is going to be one of our nurses making a different story. So I found this quite interesting. I haven't had a chance to read it, so I'm going to react with you in the same time. But I thought this was very interesting. And it's, again, from nurse.org, and it says, Pope Francis nurse, and I apologize if I do not get your name right, Massimiliano Strapetti dedicates honorary degree to all nurses. This is a really awesome story. So when Pope Francis fell gravely ill earlier this year, one nurse's voice stood out above the rest, calm, steady, and full of conviction. Try everything. Don't give up. That nurse was Massimiliano Strapetti, the Pope's longtime caregiver and advocate. His courage and compassion during the Pope's hospitalization with pneumonia not only helped save a life, but also reminded the world of the quiet strength nurses bring to the bedside. Now Maria College is honoring him for exactly that. In a ceremony held in Rome at the end of October, Maria College President Dr. Lynn Ortal and Vice President for Institutional Advancement, Vicky DiLorenzo, presented Strapetti with an honorary degree for recognizing his extraordinary advocacy, clinical excellence, and deep humanity, qualities that lie at the heart of both nursing and the college's mission, inspired by the Sisters of Mercy. His voice and presence made a real difference in one person's life, Dr. Ortal said. That's what we ask of our students, to make a difference as nurses and as human beings. What Mr. Strapetti did that day was mercy in action. It was compassion, courage, and faith that every life deserves dignity, hope, and a chance. Strapetti's nursing career began in 1991 at Rome's Agostino Gemelli Hospital, where he specialized in hematology and intensive care. His dedication and leadership led to a historic milestone, becoming the first nurse to lead a medical team at the Vatican, serving three popes: John Paul II, Benedict the 16th, and Francis. Through decades of service, Strapetti has become a symbol of quiet excellence, a nurse who not only heals but also advocates, reminding the medical community that compassion is as critical as clinical skill. I accept this recognition not just for myself, Strapetti said through a translator, but for all nurses who work tirelessly in hospitals and beyond. Dr. Jessica McNally, a chair of nursing and director of clinical excellence at Maria College, called Strapetti an inspiration to every student who dreams of making a difference. He embodies the highest ideals of nursing. He leads with empathy, skill, and a genuine heart for others, the same values we hope to instill in every future nurse who comes through our doors. Dr. Ortel added, honoring Mr. Strapetti reminds us what it means to serve both with hands and heart. His story shows that one person, one nurse, truly can change the course of a life. Congratulations to Nurse Capetti. Excuse me, did I say that right? Strapetti, for being a nurse making a difference. Thank you for your service. And that is all that I have right now for the news. So let's get into some announcements, shall we? So we do have a couple of things coming up. If you're interested in the Nurse Shark Academy, we will be having our last for the end of the year coming up in December. We will do the how to be a good podcast guest and how to get booked in to podcasts, and so we'll have those as well. And then we'll also do our last kickoff as we get ready for our 2026 challenge that we're going to do to encourage you to kick off your new year in style and get ready for a fabulous 2026 is what we're going to call it. Our fabulous 2026. We're looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. But we want to wrap up the end of this year right now. We're doing the things that we need to do. So if you need your CPR, first aid, TB training, whatever else, and you need to get it done before the end of the year, now's a great time to hop into classes. Head on over to Baxter Professional Services HealthEducation.com. If you're looking to start a new career, becoming a home health aide or a CNA, head on over there and put in an application to get into our next cohort for the CNA training program. I'm excited. Let's get you out working, because you know what? That first step you take into healthcare can lead to big things, as you can see by our nurse making a difference. I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to say bye-bye for now and see you next week. And as my friend says, if the Lord wills and the creek don't rise, have a great day.